Hello everyone, welcome to another Patreon voted review. Today's selection is Silhouette Mirage by Treasure, a deep cut if I've ever seen one. And I think this one was selected in honor of the ill-fated Treasure month, where last month I was planning to cover a bunch of Treasure games, but because the world of shmups has gotten so busy, there's been so many topics I've had to cover, I ended up only doing a video about Ikaruga. Though I will say that Ikaruga video is one of my favorite on the entire channel, so definitely check that out if you haven't before. But I don't know if that's going to be much of an issue because I don't think many people are going to be coming across this video randomly either, just based on the amount of material around the game, based on the lack of reviews, based on the lack of general interest it seems. It doesn't seem like Treasure's Silhouette Mirage was as much of a firestorm as its later as games that came after it, but I do think it will be interesting to talk about it, and I hope I do it justice. So to begin the review, I do want to bring up a problem with talking about a game like Silhouette Mirage. So follow me here. When I was first hired to do reviews for Nintendo Life, it was actually not that difficult to talk about the shmups coming out because I have a lot of experience in the genre. I've always had a lot to say about the genre. But one of my final reviews for Nintendo Life was for a game called Skyrocket, and it wasn't necessarily a shmup. It was like a shmup crossed with the tennis game and a breakout game, and I found a lot of difficulty reviewing this game. This was easily the most difficult review I ever did during my time at Nintendo Life, and the reason for it was because the game was so unique and such a hodgepodge of different genres that it was very, very difficult to pin down criticism for the game, because it ended up being like, well, you know, I don't really think this mechanic works all that well, but it is unique, and that's clearly what they were going for. So if you're looking for this type of mechanic, here it is. And I had deja vu with this game, and also a reason why this review was a little bit delayed, because I'm sitting there pounding my head against the wall like, what do you say about this game? There's so much to talk about, and yet it's so difficult to sink your teeth into exactly what's going on. So to give you some warning, this won't be a 100% positive review. I'm not going to just gush about how perfect Silhouette Mirage is, which may be a little bit bad customer service, but I do have to say that I do appreciate what Treasure put together here. It is a very interesting game, and I think this is easily Treasure at one of its most experimental phases, because there is a lot going on that I've never quite seen before and I've never quite seen since. So let's go over basically what Silhouette Mirage is. So I'd say this is a side-scrolling platformer, sort of in the vein of Sonic. You even have sections where you go up and around ramps and walls like in Sonic. But Treasure being Treasure, they weren't just going to make a Sonic clone, though I kind of wish they would. Instead, what they decided, okay, we're making a Sonic clone, but we're also adding in some run and gun elements like Gunstar Heroes, right? So you have a run and gun element where you have a gun that you shoot, but they're also adding in beat 'em up mechanics, again, sort of like Gunstar Heroes, where you can grab enemies and you can pummel them and you can beat the money out of them. And then you use the money for the RPG mechanic, where you use the money to upgrade your weapons. So you've got a lot of layers of gameplay going on, where you have a platformer, run and gun, beat 'em up, RPG, and probably some other things mixed in there as well that I'm missing, but there is a lot going on with the game genre-wise. However, one thing that I think really stands out is the key ingredient, it even gives the game its name, is the polarity mechanic, which you see later on in Ikaruga. So this is, I guess, is a prototype of that, but with some key differences, which I'll talk about right now. The first key difference is that, unlike Ikaruga, the gameplay of the game does not let you change polarity with a button press necessarily. Instead, the way it works, I get the idea with it. I feel like they were going for some sort of Taoist style theme here. Whereas if you turn one direction, you're blue. You turn the other direction, you're red. Again, sort of like the Taoist symbol. And I get the face directions. I get all that. There is an artistic element to this that I do catch on. However, when it comes to the gameplay mechanic itself, I feel like it can get pretty damn awkward, where when you're adding in these elements together and you're adding this polarity system with direction facing being the key determination of it, it gets a little bit funky. So the way it works is that when you're the same color as your enemy, you don't damage them, but you lower their attack. At least that's what my research has found. And then when you're the different color of the enemy, then you'll damage them. So it's all a game of changing colors, mismatching the colors or matching them up, routing that out. The problem is that unlike something like Ikaruga, where you can very precisely change your polarity, in this game it can get kind of awkward. For example, when it comes to damaging enemies that are facing the same direction as you, you either have to run and jump over them and sort of turn around and shoot them with the opposite color, or you need to run up, grab them, and turn around and beat them and shoot them. But there isn't a really clean way to damage enemies that are across the screen from you and are the same color. You have to do some sort of maneuvering. But when you add in the beat 'em up mechanics on it, that's where it gets weird, because let's say you have a line of enemies and you want to deal with them. You either need to just jump over all of them, turn around and shoot them all. That's a pretty effective tactic. Or you need to start getting real creative with your grabs and throws. And I can see why people would think this is really cool, but for me, it just felt really clunky throughout the game. And then I was watching some speedruns of the game to see, okay, well, let's see how these mechanics stand up, you know, when people are playing really seriously. And the way it sort of worked is that I felt like the polarity system itself, especially when you add in the RPG elements, was pretty exploitable. There just seemed to be very simple, correct ways to do the battles. And I think that is a bit of a shame, especially compared to what you'll see with the polarity system in Ikaruga, where it gets to be really deep and it gets to be really intricate. My first criticism of this game is that I think the polarity system, while very cool concept-wise, when it comes to in-depth gameplay, doesn't quite feel all that great. It doesn't feel as intuitive as it could have. So that's the polarity system. So now let's talk about the platformer elements of the game. So again, I think a problem with this game when it comes to the platforming is that it has a lot of the mechanics in place that seem really cool, right? Where you're able to run, you're able to triple jump or something like that. You also can do this sort of speed dash where you crouch down, then you hit forward while you're crouching. You can go into this dash. That's what all the speedrunners do. And it seems really, really good. It's a cool melee attack and everything like that. But I feel like the level design for the game is a little bit awkward, a little bit funky, where you never feel like you get in Sonic games, where you just get that real sense of movement and you're just able to cruise through these stages. And it's all about trying to hone in on exactly how you're going to get through the stage without stopping. This game makes you stop a lot, so it feels a lot of like stop, start, stop, start. It doesn't have that nice fluidity when it comes to the platforming. And then let's talk about the beat 'em up element. So again, you have the polarity system, you have the platforming, then you have the beat 'em up element. And the problem with the beat 'em up element is it just feels like the grab system, as opposed to something like Gunstar Heroes, where you can start doing some wild stuff with the grab system. In this game, you can do wild stuff as well, but it doesn't feel as loose because the polarity system's stuck on top of it. I think that's the big issue that I'm running into with this game a lot when it comes to the mechanics, is that they're very ambitious, they're very cool, but they seem to sort of run into each other a lot of the time. They don't flow nicely together as much as I would have liked. Then looking at the stage design feels a little bit clunky, feels a little bit funky. The boss fights are really, really fun and really, really cool. Problem is that, especially when you watch the speedrunning and stuff, they also seem pretty damn exploitable, where you can just, you know, do certain things to insta-kill bosses or take them out really quickly, because the RPG mechanics are sort of making that happen. So again, this is another example where the game is very, very cool on paper, but the elements sort of undercut each other. And I think that is my biggest criticism of Silhouette Mirage. So that is the criticism for the game. And I think what ended up happening is that they came up with a lot of really cool concepts in this game that are definitely worth trying out, but I think they were better implemented later on in Treasure's library, because this is also a fairly early game. Silvergun came out after this, then a whole other pile of games as well. So I think this is one reason why you don't hear as much about it, or why it isn't as popular. I just don't think all of its elements came together all that well. And I was reading some quote where they said Silhouette Mirage was better than Radiant Silvergun. I was like, I'm sorry. I don't think so. It is still a very cool game. And let's talk about the positives, because I don't want to just dwell on my criticism. So the first huge positive of the game is I absolutely love the graphics and the presentation and the style. This game looks gorgeous on the Saturn. It has aged very well. I love this style of graphic too, where you have those razor sharp sprites or whatever you want to call them, and then these really cool looking backgrounds. and it is very imaginative with the elements and the character design, and it has that treasure charm that's very hard to pin down, that's very hard to replicate. It's a very charming, fun game. The atmosphere is a lot of fun. It's definitely original too. It's a game that once you see it, you're not going to forget it. You're not going to confuse it with anything else. It's full of originality in that aspect. It also seems pretty entertaining to speedrun, and I do love all the movement mechanics of the game. That is really cool, how much you can do, how much your character can move around, and you are in control of what's going on. And I will say, I think the way Silhouette Mirage works is that once you get everything figured out and you get everything sort of honed in and routed out and you get very familiar with the game, I think the gameplay really starts to open itself up at that point, and it probably is a lot of fun once you get everything established, once you sort of get your route figured out and all that sort of thing. But I think it just seems a little bit limited even in the top end, where I think the boss design, the enemy design was a little bit beneath the quality that Treasure brought out later on. Again though, with a game with these many elements going on, I don't think Treasure was necessarily aiming at like a real in-depth hardcore mechanical idea. I think what they were going for is trying to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more accessible. Maybe someone who plays Sonic the Hedgehog could get into this game and play it, where maybe they would struggle with something like a Radiant Silvergun or Ikaruga. So I think they were going for accessibility, but Treasure being Treasure, they couldn't help but add in all these extra mechanics and extra dimensions of the gameplay. And I really wish I had more to say about the game, but I feel sort of, again like Skyracket, stuck as it is as far as trying to evaluate it. I feel like it was a very ambitious project that didn't quite pan out, but is definitely worth checking out and definitely worth playing for its unique aspects and something you will not find anywhere else. As I understand, there is a significant difference between the Saturn version and the PlayStation version. And I was reading what reviews were available, and it seemed like most people agreed the Saturn version was the way to go. And so I'll say check that out first. Maybe try the PlayStation version if you want a second look at it. And I think the game is a little bit on the easy side, and I saw something about the PlayStation version being harder, so maybe that could be interesting. You try the Saturn version, then if you're really into it, move on to the PlayStation version. Thanks so much, and I'll see you for the next Patreon review, Hellsinker, and that'll be a doozy. So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Dingo, Another Joe, Anthony A, Aaron Iodice, Aaron Solis, Ben, Blur, STG, Borgie22, Brian Reboot, Brian Shiver, Chris Yuzufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Corey Mark, Daniel Savage, Darren Griffin, Delta Tango 6, Disco Stas Leia, DJ 420 Praise It, Dubs, Entropy, Eric H, FCK, Full Set, Retro Schmupper, Hausu, Ilya, Kiwi, JLab, JB, RPG, Joe Angelo, John Kelly, Gameboy Guru, K, K2, Kiko Man 589, Larridge, Malaise, Mark Toms, Maz, Megadeth, Minung, Mechalin, Mitch L.Y., Queen Charlene, Nathaniel Davis, and Electron, Neon Dagger Games, Okla Kugels, Philip Mason, Portal 63, Radocat, Raul, Real Skeen, Riff Mason, Shane Sintiensky, SLW, The Boot Rex, The Real Ikuzo, The Dirty Screech, The Old Bensta, TRM, Sugumo, Twilight EX, Plasmo, and Utakaya. Thanks for watching.